The Be Good, Play Night. No, this is not. We're for the love of God now, aren't we? I got to remember that. So here we go. Number one. Let's try it.
Good evening and happy Easter. My name is Thea Stoll, and with me I have Deacon Dave Stoll, and this is For the Love of God. And for the next half hour, we're going to be discussing our daily readings, the people we meet, and how to apply the readings right into our hearts and lives. Along the way, we will have fun as well, cooking, gardening, talking about books. So let's welcome Deacon Dave.
Well, thank you, Thea, for a wonderful introduction. I really hope that we can all have fun with this because, Thea's had some background in the communications industry. She's worked at radio stations in and around Chicago, and there is proof that I have is a real tape. So it does, if I had something to listen to it with, it would work. But you know, that this is what happens. But the good news is that it is analog. So no computers back in those days because, well, quite honestly, they were still in the tens of thousands of dollars. So go analog all the way in those days. So anyway, what would we like to talk about this week is sort of the liturgical period covered by the Easter season. So as an FYI, I would kind of focus the talks on Monday through Saturday because a lot of people do things on Sunday already. Don't need another voice doing that. If you want to hear stuff on that, we've got Bishop Barron's Word on Fire. You've got Scott Hahn that does a whole bunch of stuff. And, honestly, after the pandemic and during the pandemic, you had an awful lot of churches that opened up their own live streaming and things like that. So you probably got your own pastor and priest that are doing the Sunday things already. So you don't need another voice on that. So anyway, with that, perhaps, we'll get into quite a bit of the Bible. We don't hear a lot about the daily readings because, well, most of us, including me, we have to head to work, take the kids to school, etc. So we don't really have a chance to get to daily mass too often. So anyway, that's pretty much what we're hoping to cover here. What do you think, Thea?
Yeah, just as an aside, we're going to have to reorganize so that I can read and see you
Okay.
with a something because looking here and looking at you,
Okay.
and we want to look at you, so
You want to look at me? Okay.
not really.
Uh-huh.
So, obviously, if we are, so I'm gonna be talking to the side when I'm reading this.
Mhm.
Okay. If we're hearing the Bible, we should be learning things from that. But as we are heading to church after Easter, what types of things what are we to hear? I know the last readings are the gospel. What about the others that we hear every day?
Well, Easter obviously is a big day in the church. So big, actually, that we extend it to an entire season, 50 days long in actuality. So the resurrection of Jesus Christ is such a big thing that we go from Easter to Pentecost, which means 50 days, just as an FYI. So this year, like every other year, after Easter, the church focuses on the book of Acts, and it also accounts Jesus appearing to others after his resurrection, etc. So we hear about that Sunday, and word has gotten out about his not being in the tomb. So we have those wonderful scenes out of John that teach us so many things about the post-resurrection era there. But We also hear about those two men coming from Emmaus. It's about a 6 to 7 mile walk, but these are the Sunday readings, which I mentioned earlier. Probably you hear quite a bit about. But when we read through the actual readings, we find out a number of things which really should impact all of our lives.
Like,
Well, we can get the idea that everyone just sort of stayed in that upper room and out of fear. But obviously, that didn't actually happen because we hear that two of the disciples already heard about them walking to a nearby town. And it seems that the temple leaders will bring these apostles in for questioning, in for, Sanhedrin, etc., basically bringing them to trial. There's all this stuff going on, so they're not exactly staying in that upper room doing absolutely nothing.
They're not huddling together.
No, they're actually out doing things.
Okay.
These people were, they had some real good news from Jesus Christ already, so they're passing that on. So as these events are happening, being arrested, being taken off to things, we see that there is actually almost a protective ring going on, because you hear about earthquakes that free them out of the jail, and guards that are falling asleep, and all sorts of things like that. And that we're reading to remember the basics of everything in the Bible is still in place. First rule, God is in charge.
Okay.
Now, we might think of the Romans as a group of pagan Zeus worshippers, but in reality, it was a much broader range of things than that.
How so?
Well, Romans were in charge of the world, shall we say. They covered the lands from basically northern Africa up to England, most of the European areas. So they get to see the good and the bad.
But if they're everywhere, how do we get involved? I mean, the Jews, they were everywhere too, weren't they?
Actually, they were. If you think about the days of, you heard about some of the stories of the Babylonian exile and the Assyrian destruction of the northern things. At that point, the Jews were brought to the rest of the world, out to Turkey, out to Babylon, out to Africa, Asia, Northern Europe, etc. So these were the Jews that were brought out of Jerusalem at that time. They are now all over the world. That's where they're at.
So the Jews and the Romans are traveling together.
Exactly. They're going to be together all the time because, well, that's just where they're at. They're in that middle section. Rome pretty much had that whole sliver of Europe that they were in control of. The Jews are right through there. The Jews were a little bit farther east. The Jews were really throughout the entire world after they were spread out, after the exiles and all that.
Okay. So
we can talk more about this.
no, I'm sorry. I lost my.
Well, so we have heard that, the Jewish people have a very important role in Christianity, obviously. But what we do probably fail to remember these days is just how spread out these Jewish people were. I've heard that about 10% of the Roman Empire was Jewish. So they had this huge impact on the population. Regardless of time or place, there was almost tugging at our own hearts, struggling for truth. And so that is part of what the Jewish people bring with them, and they spread that truth. The Romans had to have heard this, and they were intrigued by anytime you hear the truth, you know it, and pulls you toward it.
Okay. It's an interest. It pulls you toward it. My next question is the goals. I don't have anything right here.
Yeah. The part that says it's interesting, the goal was not just to destroy.
Yeah. So okay. You were saying something, and I said, okay, and then you can continue.
Okay. Think about it today, even. If you have left an area, okay, I have to back up just a little bit. Do you have the question there, how did the Jewish population get spread that far?
We've already passed that.
Oh, we did, okay. All right.
Why didn't they come back to their homeland? Well, we kind of talked about that.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, let's go with.
You want to redo that?
Yeah, let's redo that one. Yeah, from that part of, because then we're back in sync, I think.
Okay.
Okay.
So, how did the Jewish population get spread out so far? Weren't they in and around Jerusalem and the temple? Something about Assyrians and Babylonian aggressions broke up in the country, but that was Greco-Roman. Why didn't they come back to the homeland?
Well, think about it today. If you've left for an area for whatever reason, you've built a house, business, made new neighbors, new friends, etc., it's not going to be that easy for you just to pack up things and put it in the U-Haul and head back to Jerusalem. Obviously, they didn't have U-Haul back then either, but the whole concept is the triumph of Israel. It's found in the fact that it could survive anywhere. The synagogue system that we hear about was set up already. Been set up years before through the Maccabees, etc. Learning and being taught about Judaism was very simple, actually. We hear that Jesus taught and spoke in the synagogues, and so the system had been there. But while to a Jewish person, the whole idea of Israel being broken up and spread out to the entire known world put the idea of God to a vast area of people. And some came back, as we heard in the books of Ezra and Nehemiah, but good many stayed back in Assyria and in Babylon, because, quite honestly, Jerusalem was kind of a dump. I mean, it wasn't really pretty. And to be in a place that had all the learning, all the beauty, all that Babylon had, well, why would you go back?